I'm here too. Hello, everyone. It's Dr. Manjiri Nadkarni, Ayurvedic MD, registered holistic nutritionist, back today for another amazing session. Today, we are on day 72 of the 100 days of Ayurveda. So, today, again, I'm going to talk about a different topic. Like last week, we were discussing why sugar is bad for us, or what are certain ways sugar can harm our body. Today I'm going a step further, and we're going to discuss a lot of sugar alternatives, right? And what are certain sugar substitutes. So we're going to be discussing that. I haven't put the video for tomorrow because I'm not sure how lengthy this is going to be, right? We could have a nice discussion, and whatever is, whatever I can't complete today, I'll just continue with the discussion tomorrow, right? So that's what we are going to do. So today a few things we'll be talking about is, we're going to talk about, when we try to cut down sugar consumption, right? A lot of people go towards maple syrup or honey or agave, so we're going to discuss that. And we are also going to discuss certain artificial sweeteners, diet pop and other drinks that people often aim for, and how they can actually impact your own body. So we are also going to discuss that, and if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer those, right? So hello Uttamji, hello Ushaji, hi Iti, nice to see you. Anybody else, if you're watching this live, just say a quick hi so I know you're here. If you're watching this as a replay, put a hashtag as replay, right? And if at any point of time you have any questions for me, I'll be more than happy to answer the questions that you have. Just don't forget to tag me. I just realized that my comment section in the messages has moved. Oh yeah, like the whole family is here. That's nice. So my comment section has moved, and that's why I wasn't seeing where all the comments were, but I finally figured it out today, so all's good. And it's pretty interesting. So the one disclaimer I will give you is, I'm talking about general health, right? I'm not talking about specific conditions if you're a diabetic or if you have pre-diabetes, right? So you should definitely pay attention to what I'm talking. But this is not a one-on-one, session. This is not a diagnostic session, or this is not like a one-on-one advice. So if you want to go for one-on-one advice, feel free to book your 15-minute appointment, right? Because the last time I was talking about blood sugar, and then I had somebody talk about, oh, how are you talking generally? And I'm like, okay, I'm just giving you a heads up before I start, right? So let's get started. So when we talk about sugar, right, we talked about how and why refined sugar is bad, right? But then again, there are a lot of natural sugars as well. So we'll get started with something that is found in nature itself. So let's talk about certain natural sugars. So people, when they start eating healthy, the first thing they try to do is they increase their fruits, right? So when I talk to my clients, and if I see that they have a really poor diet, or they have a lot of refined foods, then we encourage people to eat healthy, or they try to eat healthy on their own. The first change everybody loves to make is add a lot of fruit to the diet, right? So when you add lots of fruits also have fructose, right, which is the fruit sugar, which is also going to increase your blood sugar eventually if you have sensitivity, if your insulin is not sensitive, or if you have a pre-diabetic condition, or if you are prone to getting higher blood sugar, right, or a diabetic. So you also have to watch the amount of sugar you're consuming naturally, because this is the most common question I got in the past few sessions is, can I eat honey, can I eat dates, can I eat figs, can I eat apricots, can I eat all those foods? So the rule of the thumb is, when you look at a fresh fruit, right, if you're looking at a peach, or if you're looking at an apricot, right, if you're looking at a fig, the fresh one is going to have less sugar than the dried one, right? Because when the fruit gets dried, all the water content evaporates and it's way sweeter, right? And that's how, in today's world, people use a lot of dates, right? Or people use apricots to sweeten things. But again, if you are a diabetic, especially, or if you have pre-diabetes, right, or if you have a history of diabetes, right, so there are certain things that you can definitely prevent. I know legally we don't talk about prevention in this country, or people don't believe in prevention, but Ayurveda is all about preventing, right? The whole point of knowing your body type, the whole point of planning your diet is to be able to keep you healthy for the longest time and avoid any health conditions, right? So prevention is better than cure. So if you are having a family history, or if you are pre-diabetic, or if you are seeing certain signs that your sugar is imbalanced, and I'm also going to talk about that a little bit today. So certain signs that we can see is, if you have a lot of plaque on your teeth, right? So if you feel that there's a lot of coating on your teeth, if you have excess salivation, right? If your hair is feeling a little bit matted or stickier, right? Or if you are feeling like really your body feels like really sticky, if you're attracting a lot of flies, chances are your blood sugar could be higher, right? So these are some ways to know that, okay, my blood sugar is not as low as, or normal, that you don't want to low blood sugar either. But these are some signs that you have to watch what you're eating, right? So again, when you have excess fruit, when you have excess dry fruit, especially, which are all a rage today, everybody loves dates and they're eating way more dates because dates are healthy 100%, but again, in moderation. So you can definitely have 1 to 2 a day depending on your blood sugar levels already, right? But even with anything that's healthy, you have to keep an eye out on how much you're having quantity wise. You can't have an entire jar of honey or slather honey on your toast 24/7, or add honey to your tea all the time, right? So you have to be mindful, even when it's fruit or it's natural syrups like maple syrup, or so you have to be a little bit conscious how much your total sugar intake is, if you have a history of diabetes, if you're pre-diabetic, or if you've already been diagnosed with diabetes, right? The other one thing you have to remember is, for a person, who feels hangry, or who feels extremely tired, or who feels dizzy when they haven't eaten for a long time, that is a sign that your blood sugar is dropping low, right? So usually blood sugar in today's world is low in response to a high sugar diet, right? So if you are somebody who's getting constantly hangry or irritable or exhausted, chances are you're having those spikes up and down with your blood sugar, and try to watch how much your sugar intake is and try to cut down the sugars, right? So we've discussed a little bit, related, and now we'll get into the main thing, right? So we are discussing fruits. So even dried fruits do have a lot of sugar, right? So when you have a lot of dried foods in your diet, when you have a lot of even fresh fruits, so an example is, when you look at tropical fruits, when you look at fruits that grow in the tropics, when you're talking about pineapples, or when we're talking about bananas, or when you're talking about cherries, when you're talking about grapes, right? Or even oranges. I'm just going to quickly answer a question here, or yeah. So, or look at a question, yeah. So, what happens when you have too many tropical fruits is, again, these are high sugar fruits, and they're also going to spike up your blood sugar, right? So if you are having pre-diabetes, or as a diabetic, or having blood sugar imbalances, even having more than a banana a day could be too much for you. Or if you're eating too much pineapple, it has digestive enzymes 100%, it's really good for you 100%. But if you have issues with sugar, you better watch what you're eating, even when it comes to fruits, right? So if you're having cherries, don't have the entire bag, maybe have 10. If you're having grapes, maybe have 10 grapes, so don't go for the entire bags, because anything that's a tropical fruit that's not really grown here in Canada, right, is going to increase your blood sugar, because these are high sugar fruits, right? So we're talking about pineapples and bananas, and we're talking about mangoes, right? And you can definitely have these fruits seasonally. So when they're in season, 100%, go for it. But you also have to, again, be mindful about how much you are consuming these natural sugars, right? So when we talk about berries, when we talk about blueberries or strawberries or cranberries are really tart, they're not super sweet, but mulberries, I have a beautiful mulberry tree in my backyard. blackberries. So any kind of berries have a lower glycemic index, so they don't convert to sugar in your body as fast. The same with apples. Apples have a lot of good fiber. Apple pectin is also really good for digestion, right? So apples or berries or plums or peaches are not going to be super high in sugar, right? As we compare to bananas or even melons, right? Certain melons can be really high sugar. So if you want them, definitely eat them, right? But try to do that in moderation. So that's something to understand. So I have a question, that what exactly is low blood sugar, right? So low blood sugar typically is called hypoglycemia. So a level below 70 milligrams per dl, which is 3.9 millimoles per liter, is low, and it can actually harm you, right? If your blood sugar goes extremely low, below 3.0 moles, or 54 milligrams, then you could have a lot of issues. Your body goes into a shock. And one thing to remember is low blood sugar is challenging, right? And has to be taken care of immediately. Like if you have a high blood sugar, it will damage your body, but it'll take time, and the blood sugar has to shoot up really high. But for people who have diabetes, if suddenly your blood sugar drops, you could feel dizzy, and that is more dangerous to your body, right? So always beware, right? So this is something to realize. And Nandi is saying berries are going to be his next project. Yeah, me too. I'm going to try berries next year. um, I was planning to buy some, but I don't know how I could have managed it this year. So next year I'm going to be a lot more adventurous than this year. This year I'm trying my best, to grow as much variety as I can. Okay, so first thing we covered is fruits, right? So we talked about dry fruits. So dry fruits always in moderation, right? So for people who are into vegan cheesecakes, right? And I'm not saying that graham cracker base is, really healthy, but if you're having too many dates, if you're having too many dried apricots, if you're having too many raisins, that is one place where sugar can be sneaking into your diet, right? And that could be increasing your blood sugar again. Fruit juices, right? Whether even it has pulp added, orange juice is like really high in sugar most times, and most fruit juices are, right? They at least have 28 to 30 grams of sugar, which is at least 7 teaspoons. So be careful about that. You can easily eat any kind of berries. You can have blueberries or strawberries or raspberries up to a cup, 2 cups. That's totally fine, right? But dried fruits, be a little bit careful. Now we've moved from the fruits to a little bit more like natural sugars. We'll talk about honey, right? So we talk about honey, and we also talk about maple syrup now. So honey is the pure honey that you get in Ayurveda. Ayurveda has mentioned honey to be sweet as well as astringent, right? And it is a kind of a sweetener, or it is a kind of sugar, though it has sugars, right? It can actually clean up a lot of the clogging in your body, right? So if you have excess kapha, so honey is one of the best remedies to have, balance your kapha in the body. And that's extremely important to understand. So if you are eating honey, right, always buy the pure, raw, unpasteurized one. And it's going to work wonderful. So even if you have cough or long-standing cough, honey works extremely well. When it comes to blood sugar, though, it is going to increase your blood sugar if you have too much honey in your diet, right? So whether we count maple syrup, whether we talk about maple sugar, again, whether we talk about maple candies, maple syrup, right? They are going to increase your blood sugar, and they are slightly higher on the glycemic index. Coconut sugar is lower on the glycemic index as you compare it to maple sugar, right? So try to have that if you really want like a sweet sugar or something. Again, brown sugar, turbinado sugar are all derivatives of sugar, right? Or even cane sugar or evaporated cane syrup. They're all different names given to sugar, right? Which is coming from cane or sugar beets. And that is again going to spike up your blood sugar. So even if you're having honey or maple syrup, always have it in moderation, right? And try to pair it with something that has protein. So my suggestion is, a lot of my clients really like maple syrup, on their oatmeal, right? So one simple thing you can do to balance blood sugar is add a protein or a fat or a fiber, right? Whenever you're having something that's really sweet. So an example is if you are making an oatmeal, right? Get the steel cut oats, which are high in fiber, right? They're also high in nutrients because they have not been processed as much. You're going to get all the B vitamins from there. So if you have steel cut oats, right, then you can add maple syrup in it, and also add a pinch of cinnamon. That's going to balance your blood sugar, right? So cinnamon is a fantastic spice, right? So anytime you're baking, if you are a baker, I'm not a baker, I'm really bad at baking. I have a general disregard for most rules, is what I like to say. So I can't bake, I can't follow those proportions, but I'm an excellent cook, right? So if you are baking, always add a pinch of cinnamon, right? So if you are baking with maple syrup, or even if you make stewed apples, or even if you're making any pies, or something sweet, because right now everybody's baking, all my clients are into baking, especially with the fruit that you can get in this season, and everybody's making pies. So try to cut down the sugar, right? One of the ways you can do is, you can use natural fruit juice and start cooking the fruit in its own juices. That's going to, like, you're going to add less added sugars. And if you are adding natural sweeteners, whether you're adding maple syrup, whether you're adding honey, add some cinnamon. And another important tip is never heat honey, right? In Ayurvedic medicine, or in Ayurveda, we talk about never heating the honey and not adding honey to hot foods, because it can create a compound that could be a little bit harmful to your body, right? So try to avoid that. So we've discussed honey, we've discussed a little bit of maple syrup as well. And maple sugar, again, is something that can definitely increase your blood sugar. The same with maple syrup. So moderation is again the key, right? Now, when it comes to a lot of store bought maple syrups, they are not even 100% pure. So luckily in Canada, you can get really good quality maple syrup, right? So always buy from a trusted source, always buy a clean one, right? And don't buy the packaged one, because some of them are full of corn syrups, right? So if you buy even like the table syrup, or like on your pancakes and all that, if you're buying syrup, out of a box, a lot of the times, if it's just labeled as a syrup, it's going to be corn syrup, which is not good for your health, right? Corn syrup, high fructose corn syrup, is going to spike up your blood sugar again, and it's not the healthy alternative. So try to be extremely mindful, whether it's honey, whether it's maple syrup, especially if you're having issues with your blood sugar. So that's one thing to keep in mind, right? So let's talk about the common, things when we talk about artificial sweeteners, right? So the problem with, like, there are most commonly, we have different natural sweeteners, we have different artificial sweeteners. So of the natural sweeteners, stevia is extremely popular in today's world. There is also some inulin, there is erythritol, there is xylitol, right? There are a lot more. There's monk fruit extract. So there are all these natural sweeteners as well. And when we talk about artificial sweeteners, there's the asalfame and there's aspartame, right? And then there's saccharin, there's sucralose. There are different kinds of, natural as well as artificial sweeteners, right? So they had done some studies on artificial sweeteners, right? So artificial sweeteners are not as healthy. When we talk about health, when we talk about your diet, so artificial sweeteners are really low calorie. That's why people have them, right? Because they don't want to fill up the calories. If you're having sugar, then you're having a lot of calories. If you're having um, maple syrup or honey, then you're having a lot of calories. So the one thing that people try to trick their bodies is by giving it a low calorie sweetener, right? Typically you can see this in your gum. So aspartame is extremely common in gum. You can get those Splenda, you can get sweet and low packets to add to your foods. Also diet pops have tons of artificial sweeteners added in them, right? So people eat, usually most people eat about 20 teaspoons of sugar a day, right? And it's coming from your diet, it's coming from the ice creams and sodas, and that is why people started looking for something known as, artificial sweeteners, right? So the first discovered artificial sweetener was in 1879, right? It was saccharin, and it was 300 times sweeter than sugar, and was typically used during World War One and two for to make up for the sugar shortages, right? And there was a lot of rationing. So a Canadian study was carried out in 1970s. It showed that saccharin was actually causing bladder cancer in rats, right? So people were disturbed about it, but then people were disturbed because the FDA wanted to close it down, right? So then they just went by with a warning that use it at your own discretion, and this may be hazardous to your health, right? So it can cause cancer in animal laboratories, so try to be careful. But people still wanted to eat it because they couldn't give up the sugars, right? So that's something to keep in mind, that even with a sweetener, whether it's artificial, right, what ends up happening is the addiction to sugar does not go away. The more sugars you're consuming, even natural, or if you're going for artificial sweeteners, right, the more sweet taste you're consuming, what ends up happening is you keep constantly craving those sweets. You're constantly going to crave, and the cycle does not break, and you end up being addicted to sugar, right? So that's one thing to really keep in mind. And then there is aspartame, which is another sweetener that's really common, right? So in a lot of my clients, I've seen brain fog, right? People who chew gum all the time, for some of them, it can create chronic fatigue syndrome. They're tired constantly. So there are different symptoms that, if you go on the internet, you can see that there are people having different symptoms in response to different sweeteners, right? Aspartame, it's lack of focus, brain fog, sometimes anxiety as well. It's something that I see commonly in my practice. And it can also cause a lot of muscle pain, or for you to feel extremely tired, right? So that's something to again keep in mind, that whether it's Splenda, whether it's not stevia, sorry, whether it's aspartame, try to have a minimal consumption of artificial or sugar substitutes, and try to completely avoid it, right? So aspartame or something that's an artificial sweetener, completely try to avoid it. And there were some interesting mechanisms. I was reading a few articles, because every day before this, I'll sit down and do a bit of research. And one thing that they found was, when you're eating aspartame, or when you're eating a food that has aspartame, which is about 200 times more powerful than sugar, it's way sweeter, right? So it's going to ignite certain of those sweet receptors in your body, right? So the addiction to sugar continues. That's one thing. The other thing that ends up happening is, whenever that sweet response is elicited in the body, your insulin has to take that sugar, and it has to deposit it in the tissues in the form of fat mainly, right? Or push it inside the cells. So whenever there is perceived high blood sugar, right, your insulin response is elicited, and then the insulin has to do its job of clearing the blood of excess sugar. But when you're having aspartame, you're actually not increasing the blood sugar. So your insulin is secreted, but your body doesn't have excess sugar, which is going to drop your blood sugar lower, right? So when you have hypoglycemia, you're going to feel hungrier. You're going to need more food. You're going to need more calories, because hypoglycemia to the body is a threat, and your body can actually, like, if you're not eating, if your sugar goes too low, you can really die from it, right? So your body is going to do everything in its power to be able to maintain itself, right, or maintain homeostasis, and you end up creating a lot of cravings. So if you're having aspartame as a sweetener, chances are the cycle keeps continuing, and you're eating more calories as well. So it's making you hungrier, right? That's one thing. And a habitual sweet tooth. So a lot of the times in my practice, I also see that people will have a diet pop and they'll have a cake on the side, right? Or they'll have a diet pop and they'll eat like a chocolate bar, right? So for some people, it's almost like, okay, I'm trying to restrict my calories here, but I can eat this, right? So this is a poor lifestyle choice. So again, like the whole point I want to make is, artificial sweeteners are not the way to go, right? So though they don't cause dental caries and they can, have your blood sugar balanced, is what people think, they're not really balancing your blood sugar, and they can actually be pretty hazardous to your body. And if you go online, there are so many trials done on aspartame, right? And it showed that people are sensitive to aspartame, they get a lot of headaches, there could be issues with blood pressure, there could be increased, allergic responses to aspartame as well. So you have to be extremely careful about aspartame. And in certain animal models, it can also promote seizures, right? Or you can get like epilepsy like attacks. So try to minimize, any kind of artificial sweeteners. Try to avoid any kind of sweeteners, ideally, right? And as I mentioned, saccharin was the other one. It's still, available. So try to absolutely avoid it as much as you can. Sucralose is another non-calorie sweetener, that's made with from sugar, and usually it is like the 0 calorie sugar substitute, right? So typically it's a chlorinated sugar that's 600 times sweeter than sugar, right? And again, it can create a lot of issues because there are safety concerns, because of certain organic chlorides. They can be toxic to your body, they can also be carcinogenic to your body, right? So sucralose is extremely insoluble in fat, right? So it does not typically get into fat, but it can create a lot of issues with digestion as well. So try to avoid, any kind of artificial sweeteners is the one thing I would like to say. Any questions? Okay, no. So then we go to stevia, right? So stevia is a natural sweetener. It's a South American plant. It's been used for ages, for centuries, to sweeten beverages and make tea, right? And it has certain glycosides. So there's the riboside A, right, which is a compound that provides a lot of sweetness. So stevia, for now, in Japan, it's been studied over 20 years, and till now, there have not been a lot of toxic effects, right, found out. But again, when you're taking a lot of even stevia or xylitol, you're not going to stop the cravings, right? So that is one thing. And then I'm looking at a study where high doses were fed to rats, and actually decrease the sperm production and increase cell proliferation, right, which could cause infertility. So there are far and few studies done, right? But monk fruit extract, or um, stevia or xylitol, use it in moderation. Do not use a lot of it, right? So for anybody who's trying to eat healthy, the first thing you have to do is try to watch how much sugar you're consuming, and also trying to figure out why you're craving that sweet taste, right? Usually that sweet taste, the desire, comes from a lack of serotonin, which can also create a lot of issues in your body, right? So when you're lacking in serotonin, you feel dull and lethargic, and you're reaching to the sugar, and that's helping you kind of perk up, right? Or that's giving you more dopamine, that's eliciting your reward syndrome, your reward center, sorry. So you have to find out why you're needing that sweetness. Are you going through any kind of anxiety and you're using sugar to calm down? Or if you're going through boredom and you're just using sugar to eat, just to distract yourself from that boredom, right? So try to figure out the root cause of what's going on with you. And I have a comment. Uttamji saying he's never used any artificial sweetener. That's really good. So growing up, the one thing, growing up, I was pretty obese as a teenager, right? So in my teens, because of a faulty diet, I used to eat milk and bananas every single day. And being a kapha body type, I'd gained a lot of weight. And then I went on a diet where I absolutely stopped having any kind of sugars, right? But I added a lot of artificial sweeteners in my diet. And this was my pre Ayurveda days. I had no idea what Ayurveda was, maybe around grade 11, 12. And I was feeling like I was gaining weight constantly, even though I was on a reduced calorie diet, right? And that was because my system was not functioning well. My stress glands, now when I look back, I think my stress glands were probably like totally exhausted at that time. And I was still consuming that sweet taste, and I was still addicted to that sweet taste. And I was having a lot of diet pop on a regular basis, just to cut down the sugar. So it wasn't really a healthy diet, and it did not help me at that time. My hair started falling out. I was looking tired, and I was gaining weight, but I was really frustrated. So again, the moral of the story is, artificial sweeteners or even natural sugar substitutes or natural sweeteners, try to always have it in moderation, right? And for most people, right, you are eating way more than you think you are. So always be mindful and really try to clean up your diet. So this is where I'm going to end today's video. If you have any questions, you can put it in the comment section, and I'll be more than happy to answer. I'll be back for another video tomorrow. So what I'm going to talk about tomorrow is, dietary ways to balance blood sugar, right? And I'll be covering lifestyle as well, if I can cover it in the same one. So what are some ways? Today I spoke a little bit about what are some substitutions you can make, or how to increase your fiber or protein, or so tomorrow I'll be talking a little bit more about meal planning, specifically to balance blood sugar. What are certain things you need to have in your diet to be able to balance blood sugar. And I'm also going to talk about different tastes that you're lacking in your diet. So if you're lacking a certain taste in your diet, that's also not balancing the excess sugar that you're eating, right? So this is what we'll be discussing tomorrow. So thank you all for watching this. I'll be back tomorrow. I'm doing a live today, and I'll probably do one on Thursday evening. This Friday, I'm heading out for a mini break. So I'll probably switch off from social media. I'm just going to, take a little bit break, and I'll be back next week, Monday or Tuesday. Mondays are a little bit busy at the clinic. So I think I'm going to move from Monday to like Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I'm still trying to find my rhythm with the Facebook Lives. And it's been going well. Like the clinic has started, everything's going well. And thank you all for your comments on my garden. So now that you know what's keeping me sane, and lots of varieties of fruits. And I'm going to talk about one fruit or one kind of melon I have in my garden that's amazing to balance blood sugar. So I'll be talking about that in the video tomorrow. So thank you all for watching this live. I really appreciate it. And I'll be back tomorrow, same time, and let's talk about balancing blood sugar with foods, right? Yeah, for sure. So if I have enough, right now there are just 2 flowers, and I'm waiting for the bitter melon to flower and have some fruit. But for sure, if I have a surplus bounty, I don't mind sharing at all. So thank you all once again, and have a fantastic night, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye for now.